Good day. My name is Jordan, and I'm here to present our paper entitled A Survey of Augmented Piano Prototypes Has Augmentation Improved Learning Experiences, along with my co-authors, Sven Klen Čopič Pucihar, and Matjaž Kljun. The process of learning the piano is very tricky and is actually a centuries-old technique. However, as of present, users still struggle with learning the piano. Everyone knows that learning the piano requires consistent practice and a lot of skill. To have a better understanding with this, we conducted an interview with piano teachers. This interview with piano teachers allowed us to derive themes. These themes is something that we use to come up and help us do the qualitative analysis and categorization of the different augmented piano prototypes that we have reviewed during the past decades. We also did a study of the different evaluation strategies and user studies. And combining all of this, we were able to provide some recommendations to allow us to expand the design space and to allow future explorations of piano and augmented piano interfaces. To begin with, we began with an interview. We recruited 10 piano teaching experts from different places such as Slovenia, the Philippines, Switzerland, and the United States. On the screen, we will see the different years of experience, the years of teaching, and their preferred method of teaching. In doing this interview, we wanted to understand what are the different methods, frameworks, and approaches used to teach the piano. Since we are interviewing piano teachers, we wanted to get their first-hand experience that they have observed when teaching the students and their own experiences when teaching the piano. Specifically, we wanted to inquire if there are certain factors or nuances that they focus on, and if there are certain topics in the curriculum that they needs more focused. Since our goal was towards designing a digitally augmented piano, we wanted to understand and to shed light on their openness to digital technology if they're not yet currently using it, or if they're currently using it, what are their comments or their wishful thoughts or wishful thinking towards designing a piano prototype. We can see on the screen some of the different quotes and notes that we were able to gather. Basically, we were able to transcribe all the interviews, did some coding, did some thematic analysis, and we initially started with different categories and levels. So we can see on the screen here, there are different levels. More details can be viewed on the paper if you wish to see this affinity diagram. But coming up with these different categories, we were able to categorize them and analyze them in a properly themes. Thus, we were able to come up with what we call the different themes in piano learning. These themes are 1. Synchronizing movement and posture between body parts. 2. Improving sight reading, or as people know, note reading skills. 3 is on motivating students to practice, and 4 on enabling improvisation. These themes gave us an extra lens or equipped us with the skills we needed in order to be able to come up with a systematic review of augmented piano prototypes. On your screen, we will see the different methods that we did. So we conducted a search of papers in the digital library using keywords digital piano, augmented piano, virtual reality piano, augmented reality piano, and many others. From this initial search, we were able to gather around 1,000 results. Since these are a lot of results, we needed to employ what we call an inclusion criteria to narrow down the papers. In this inclusion criteria, we wanted to come up with the definition of an augmented piano. Now, following this search, we were able to narrow down our results to around 56 papers. These 56 papers were then collected with data, the data of which were analyzed qualitatively. And given the themes that we were able to derive earlier, we were able to come up with a categorization of this corpus or of this data collection of papers. Here, we then synthesize our findings to come up with more recommendations. On the screen, we shall see the corpus of papers we were able to collect from year 2005 all the way to year 2021. We collected different information such as the authors, the year, the venue of the conference, what type of augmentation they were able to do. And then from here, we analyze these papers, reviewed them, how their contributions are, and from which learning themes of the piano we think they would fall under. This allowed us to be able to categorize the different piano prototypes under the synchronization theme, the sight reading theme, the motivation theme, and the improvisation theme. Following this categorization of papers, we were able to come up with some initial findings. We would see that the synchronization module is one of the more saturated categorizations or form of augmentations that we have seen. And we can also see that sight reading, motivation, and improvisation are something that we would say least explored areas in piano augmentation. In focus, we look at synchronization, movement, posture, and the different contributions there. Which you can see on the screen, we have the innovations introduced by Mirror Fugue, Andante, and Duet for solo piano. In these contributions or augmentations, they used some projections, such as animated animals, dancing human sketches, conjured reflections, or a reflection of their hands. According to these papers, these contributions or these augmentations help the users have a better understanding of their movement, of the positioning, and the key press. Second, we also look at the different contributions that are geared towards improving sight reading skills. Our experts allowed us to define that sight reading contributions must allow the users to be able to still read piano sheet notation and at the same time be able to map this with timing and key presses. Some of the notable works which are very common allowed a projection of the musical sheet and the very common piano roll visualization. We can see this in the works of Yang, Takegawa, Rogers, Wayang, and many other works. Third, we also have works on motivating students to practice. Several software modules and some gamification approaches have been done to motivate students to practice. All our experts and all the papers we have reviewed as well say that in music, practice is also a very important component to be able to have or hone a user's skills. Some important or notable features are what we call the lesson builder, the practice builder, and some gamified elements where you use point system, a scoring system to be able to encourage the students to practice on their own. Towards enabling improvisation, we have seen some notable works such as The Pitch Wheel by Klen and et al., projected improvisations that recommend to the users which key would suggest an oral or auditorially correct sound feedback. And we have also seen the work where some improvisations encourage the users to use gestures. And these gestures were either interpreted or classified that help the user expand their musical vocabulary by introducing some recommended or suggested tunes. So these contributions are somehow enhanced or improved the musical performance, allowing the users to have their own personal flow in their performances. Alongside the different contributions, we also wanted to analyze the different trends in user studies of the users. Unfortunately, not all 56 papers were able to conduct user studies on their augmented prototypes. We were only able to see 13, and in doing so, we were able to gather data on the type of treatment they use, the different types of metrics, and the different instruments or tools they use to validate their assumptions. More details can be read on the paper as well. What we were able to notice along these trends in user studies was that the types of research questions changed during the earlier years compared to the more recent years. Before, such questions were addressed in user studies such as, does the system track the user's fingers successfully? Can the users play a chord? Is there a delay between the sound and graphics when the users play? Some of these questions have now moved into more recent years where we can see questions such as, do users play properly with the piano? Do users learn faster with this augmentation? Or does augmentation overwhelm the users? Looking at these two types of questions, we could see that the previous questions were more focused on the performance of the augmented piano, and some of them have moved towards the performance of the piano player of the user of the augmented piano system itself. This led us to different types of learnings, and these learnings allowed us to provide or design recommendations for future designs. What we wanted to do in doing these recommendations, we based them on one, the recommendations of our experts, the different future work mentioned in the papers we reviewed, and the different frameworks that we have seen on studies that have used digital augmentations. These 5 recommendations are balancing between traditional techniques and new approaches, ensuring motivation, measuring expressiveness, learner personalization, and other types of interventions. Specifically, our experts believe that the only way or the best way to learn the piano is to be able to learn the traditional techniques and be able to bridge them with novel approaches. Our experts agree that technology is inevitable and they are very open to receiving them. However, to be able to have a solid understanding of being able to play a skill such as the piano, an important balance would be very important. Along with the skill and the novelty of digital augmentation, it is also important to motivate the users and allow them to be consistent in their practice regimen. Our piano experts also note that the reason improvisation is a least explored skill, that least taught and least explored in other augmentations because it is probably difficult to assess and to measure. Thus, we call on for newer innovations or other contributions that allow us to have a better understanding or a better assessment of improvisation as a skill or as a factor by the players. Recent successes in augmentation in other areas were able to show us that learner personalization, or specifically personalization, has always been working. Thus, we also call for different recommendations or different contributions on personalized learning to be able to consider, for example, the state or the cognitive load of the user, their own preference or taste in their music, and other elements. We also call for other types of interventions that are not necessarily covered by these 4 prior recommendations. Such interventions include timing, the size and aesthetic design of the visualizations, and possibly also being able to understand user movement in spatial environments. More details on our recommendations are also mentioned in our paper. In summary, we were able to interview piano teachers in order for us to have a better understanding on the piano learning. The qualitative data of this allowed us to derive 4 learning themes from the data we collected. These themes allowed us to understand the different piano, to do a piano review across the decades. We use these themes as a lens in evaluating the different forms of piano augmentations and the different trends in user studies as well. Following all the learnings from the previous and the second contributions, we were able to provide recommendations for future explorations in piano augmentations. We provided different recommendations that are based on several learning frameworks or from the learnings of the review and from the interview data. We hope that these recommendations can help us design the next generation of musical interfaces as well. If you wish to read more details about our paper, we encourage you to read them at the ACM Digital Library or to check out our project website. Once again, this is Jordan, and this has been a survey of augmented piano prototypes. Thank you for listening,